Well, he's probably walking here.
I just drove over there to see if
He wasn't there.
I'm not saying walking here, but walk.
Up.
But I have it here. She said she liked both.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. All right, let's study Bhagavad-gita as it is, chapter 5, entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, text 18. It's February 23rd, 2020. Text 18 of chapter 5.
Some of my favorite.
This is your favorite verse?
One of my
It's
of my many favorites.
It's amongst your favorite verses. Yes. Okay. Well, this is certainly a foundational key verse of Bhagavad-gita. Prabhupada quotes it a lot. So, Vidya, Vinaya, Sampane, Brahmane, Gavi, Hastini, Shuni, Cha, Eva, Svapake, Cha, Pandita, Samadarshina, Vijavinaya Sampane, Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Shunicheva Svapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshina, Vijavinaya Sampane, Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Nichaiva Svapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshina, Vijavinaya Sampane, Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Shunichaiva Svapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshina.
Vijavinaya Sampane,
Vijavinaya Sampane, Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Shunichaiva Svapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshina, Vijavinaya Sampane, Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Shunichaiva Svapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshina,
Vijavinaya Sampane,
Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Shunichaiva Svapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshina, Vijavinaya Sampane, Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Shunichaiva Svapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshina, Vijavinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavihastini Shunichaiva Svapakecha Pandita Samadarshina
Vijavinaya Sampane
Vijavinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavihastini Shunichaiva Svapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. Anyone on internet like to recite the verse? Vidya, education, Vinaya, gentleness, Sampane, fully equipped, Brahmane, in the Brahman, Gavi, in the cow, Hastini, in the elephant, Shuni, in the dog, Cha, and Eva, certain, Svapake, in the dog eater, the outcast, Cha, respectively, Pandita, those who are so wise, Samadarshina, do see with equal vision. Translation. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, outcast. So this is the equal vision verse.
This is the dog verse.
It's the dog verse. I've never thought of it that way.
How could you not?
Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. A Krishna conscious person does not make any distinction between species or castes. The Brahmin and the outcast may be different from the social point of view, or a dog, a cow, or an elephant may be different from the point of view of species. But these differences of body are meaningless from the viewpoint of the learned transcendentalist. This is due to their relationship to the Supreme, for the Supreme Lord, by His plenary portion, as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. Such an understanding of the Supreme is real knowledge. As far as the bodies are concerned in different castes or different species of life, the Lord is equally kind to everyone because He treats every living being as a friend, yet maintains Himself as Paramatma regardless of the circumstances of the living entities. The Lord as Paramatma is present both in the outcast and in the Brahmin, although the body of a Brahmin and that of an outcast are not the same. The bodies are material productions of different modes of material nature, but the soul and the supersoul within the body are of the same spiritual quality. The similarity in the quality of the soul and the supersoul, however, does not make them equal in quantity, for the individual soul is present only in that particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present in each and every body. A Krishna conscious person has full knowledge of this, and therefore he is truly learned and has equal vision. The similar characteristics of the soul and supersoul are that they are both conscious, eternal, and blissful. But the difference is that the individual soul is conscious within the limited jurisdiction of the body, whereas the supersoul is conscious of all bodies. The supersoul is present in all bodies without distinction. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadama Darati Sva Parantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Rakanatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadvitam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Krishna Vitam Muscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpati Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Raja Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini Vijavinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shuniche Vasvapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, or outcast. Yes. Okay. So Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga. So this describes a very clean and elevated spiritual consciousness. This the humble sage, Okay, a truly humble sage. So it's someone who's actually seeing the spirit soul, someone who's seeing the spirit soul in all living entities, starting with myself, starting with ourselves. And so that's really what it's about. That by practicing, well, any true process of spiritual life, certainly by practicing what's given in Bhagavad-gita, then we more and more get to realize it's not just theory. We talked about this last night. Many of you were there, Shambhala. And it's a science. Science means, yes, there's a consistent hypothesis or philosophy, and there's a process we can practice to realize the truths, starting with the truth of the ABC of spiritual life, that I'm not the body, I'm spirit, soul, right? And that inside all bodies, there's the spirit soul. To actually see the spirit soul, and to see with the eyes of transcendental knowledge, even at first cognitively, intellectually, and then more and more with realization. We see and we relate to ourselves and others as a spirit soul and not the body. This seeing, just like seeing with eyes of knowledge. Meaning, like, we're not, we're seeing beyond the imperfect material pratyaksha. Material pratyaksha, it means what we perceive with these senses. Then there's spiritual pratyaksha, which is the soul's direct, unmediated experience of reality. That's spiritual pratyaksha, because the soul also has senses. Right now, our sense perception is mediated, filtered through the material mind, ego, and senses. So just like, okay, so someone without basic scientific knowledge sees, a little child will see the sun as a circle 3 inches in diameter in the sky. So we might say with our eyes, that's what we see too, but we don't see a circle 3 inches in diameter because we're seeing with the eyes of knowledge. We're seeing with the eyes of knowledge. Just, we say, okay, there's this square metal plastic thing. We see, okay, but we don't know there's circuitry. I don't know too much actually, but there's some circuitry inside that computer thing, and that makes it work like that. So we see, even materially, we see with the eyes of scientific knowledge. So spiritually, Tashri Krishna Namadi, Namba Vedgrai Indriya, Sevan Mukhi Hitivida, Svaimeva Sparatyada, that as we purify our senses, as as we engage our minds and senses and ego in this process, then we spiritualize our existence, and more we see the soul. More and more we see the soul. And this is the platform of equality. This is the platform that everyone, all living entities, not just Brahmins and dog eaters, but also dogs, elephants, and cows, and blades of grass and squirrels, that everyone's a spirit soul. Everyone's a spirit soul. That's the platform of equality. So we sometimes say, like if we say like, well, the platform of equality is that yes, even though you're white and you're black and you're Arab and you're Jew and you're woman and you're man, and you have this sexual orientation, you have that sexual orientation, still we can get on in harmony and peace. So that, as we can see, that doesn't work. That doesn't work because it's starting with ignorance. It's starting with ignorance. It's starting with illusion. It's starting with a misidentification that the driver is the car. Okay? So the real platform, because actually if we use the car example, the vehicle, cars are not equal. Okay? All cars accelerate at the same rate, no? All cars can equally fit into tight parking spaces in the city. No. All cars have the same amount of horsepower. No, we understand. There's a moped, there's a Harley Davidson, there's an 18-wheeler truck, there's a Lexus, there's a mini compact, and different cars have qualities that others don't have, and like that. So the bodies are not equal. Bodies are not equal. Okay. So saying, okay, but the drivers. So okay, taking the metaphor, the driver of each car. That's a human being worthy of dignity and respect, and like that. So the drivers of the car. Seeing that's the equality, and the car they're driving might be more or less in different ways. So this is the vision. This is the realized vision of a humble, wise person. It's not just theoretical. So this is actually describing quite an elevated consciousness. Vijavinaya sambhane brahmane gamyastuni shuniche vasapakchat pandita samadarshina. So so the soul, and then so it's described in Bhagavad-gita. Kshetrabhyam chapimam vidi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Kshetragnam gyaya yatat gyanam matamama. So Krishna describes in the 13th chapter. And so in the body there's a knower. I mean, in the body there's an entity that's intrinsically full of knowledge, transcendental knowledge. And Krishna says, and there's two knowers. So there's the Atma and there's the Paramatma. You know, in coaching or seminars, we use this term a lot, that the purpose of all the skills, the methods, the processes is to support people to connect with the highest guidance within. So that's the Paramatma. That's the super soul. To connect with the highest guidance within. And so the Paramatma, well, you might say Paramatma. So in other words, so there's an expansion of Krishna. There's an expansion of God sitting right next to us. Right? And it's been like the spirit soul that's animating the blade of grass, or the spirit soul inside the body of a cow, or a chicken, or a dog, or the spirit soul inside the most evil person we can imagine. Okay, whatever there's life, there's a soul and there's a super soul. Upadrash Tanumantachar Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara Paramatmeti Chatyuktam Disam Pusham Para. So Krishna says there's two main functions of the Paramatma: to give wise guidance for our true best interest, to give wise guidance for our true best interest, and to be a facilitator, to facilitate the ultimate seminar. So, overseer and permitter, facilitator, and giving guidance. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yes. Meaning, so we're always getting the most auspicious guidance from Paramatma within the heart. And in material conditioned life, we're ignoring it. Or, I know, I'll do the opposite. Okay, that's material conditioned life. So at the same time, whatever we desire, Paramatma facilitates. Paramatma is the facilitator of the material universe, as we've discussed related to some recent Bhagavatam verses, that the Paramatma is the Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. It's the Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. So Paramatma, that's the super soul in the heart of every living entity, and Antarasta, Pramanacha, Antarasta, the super soul in every atom. That's Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. The super soul of the whole universe is Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Super soul of the whole material creation is Karanadakashayi Vishnu. Okay. So we got Kshirodakashayi Vishnu sitting right next to us, giving us guidance, and at the same time, saying, well, I want this, I want that, facilitating our desires, either through his material energies or spiritual energies. Material energies or spiritual energies, facilitating our desires and giving us that experience. Okay. So, all right. There's a verse in 18th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, and Krishna says, Mat chitta sarvadurgani mat prasada tarishyasi atachat svam ahankaram nashosyasi vinaksyasi. And Krishna says to Arjuna, so if you hear me, if you hear him really, sometimes Krishna says, I am the super soul, and sometimes he speaks of super soul, Paramatma, in the third person. If you listen to him, you'll easily cross over the miseries of the ocean of material existence. But if instead, ahankara, machita sarvadagari, mat prasada turisisi, ahankaram vimudatma, nashoshasi. However, if you listen to false ego, then you'll be lost. Then we're bewildered in the material ocean of nescience, and we don't even know that we're bewildered. So connecting with the highest guidance within, and that's the purpose of all we attempt to do, whether it's in these discussions, whether it's in a Sappho advanced seminar, a foundational seminar, or a coaching session, or coach training, supporting ourselves and others to realize who we are, to see the spirit soul as the animating factor of all life, even to see the spirit soul within each atom, and to connect with that highest guidance within. So certainly the risk is that, okay, we got many voices within. Okay, so any voice, I have this voice within, must be super soul. Wait a second. I'm confident that like the great percentage of voices within, they are not super soul. This is an important point. This is an important point because we can get romantic about, no, I have this voice from my heart. Okay, and it always gets me into trouble. It's terrible. Okay, so spiritual life. So spiritual life means making that distinction, because we got the voice of our material mind. We got the voice of our material ego, which has agendas. And of course, if it comes from any part of me, it must be spiritual. But actually, that's the thing. So our material mind, intelligence, and false ego, they got agendas that are just about further immersing ourselves in the illusion that we are the body and will be fulfilled by fulfilling these bodily needs and things like that, taking us away from this vision of the humble sage. Right? So spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, as we go on, is about making the distinctions between those voices. You know, something we can, so that what's the actual voice of Paramatma, and what's the what's the voice of Maya through the mind, through the false ego. And it's not about Maya, I've always listened to Super Soul word for Maya, that Maya out there. So Maya only influences us to the extent that we're hungry to be influenced by illusion. And since it's so, Super Soul is the facilitator. Paramatma is the overseer and permitter, and facilitating us. So to the extent that, I don't want full spiritual realization and sincere desire to serve Krishna. I want some other things, but I want it to look spiritual. So then Super Soul will facilitate through so many energies. There's the verse from Bhaktisiddhanta we quote a lot. The world stands in no need of any reformer, meaning that highest guidance within is there for everyone, and we don't want to interfere with it, and that's why our process is about supporting everyone to connect with that highest guidance within. That's what it means. That I'm not the expert in your life. I endeavor to cultivate expertise in facilitating you to connect with your self-realization, your highest guidance within. Okay. So this humble sage with this vision, well, let's just go ahead. Tatchadadana Munayo, Gyana Vairagya Yuktaya, Ashanti Manichatana Bhakti Shuddhaya, Vihitaya. The humble sage, the humble student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes the absolute truth by performing bhakti, devotional service according to what he's heard, according when it says in the Vedanta Sutra. And the Vedanta Sutra is like Vyasadev's summary of the Vedas. It's expanded in Bhagavad-gita, of course, given to us through the Parampara, through Srila Prabhupada. So, by performing this devotional service, we get more and more clear on those distinctions. What's Maya and what's Paramatma. It's actually going to take me to this realized state. So the humble sage treats everyone equally. Means he treats everyone the same. No, not the same. Okay, there's a big difference between equal and same. Okay, so so everyone. So spiritual consciousness means we treat everyone equally. Meaning, I got no friends or enemies based on material agendas. Based on this is attractive to me, this is not attractive to me. Based on you're on my turf. Based on let's make a business deal. So and so there's no discrimination, equal opportunity employer. So, but not the same, meaning, like, okay, there's some letters from one letter in particular, and Prabhupada writes to his disciple in 1972. He writes, he goes, your development of Krishna consciousness will be shown when you're able to communicate these universal principles in a way that everyone will respond positively, that everyone gets it. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what Prabhupada writes. Meaning that this self-realized soul described in this verse, relating to everyone in such a way as a true friend. Suridam Sarvabhutana. Tutik Sarva Kunika. Suridam Sarvadehina. A true friend of all living entities. Like, I'm going to relate to him, relate to you and you and you, and the dog, and the cow, and the blade of grass. Relate to you in such a way that I'm going to support you to move to spiritual realization, to connect with Paramatma, to connect for your highest good. And that might look differently in different ways, right? Might look differently in different ways. So for some it might look like some loving yet very challenging chastisement. For some it might look like nurturing empathy. For some it might look like, let's not talk, have another samosa. Yeah, okay. Yes. That's what it looked like for me for 3 years. Yes. David Wolf, it's no use talking to him, just give him more samosas. More than 3 years, actually, but yes, right. So, and for some it might look like, what are your philosophical questions? What are your doubts? Let's talk about it. For some it might look like it's time for like a 3-hour kirtan. Yeah. Talk time is over. It's time for a 3-hour kirtan. And like that. And for some it might look like, good morning, have a nice day. We mentioned this, there's once, maybe more than once, but once it's transcribed in the conversations, and they're doing a morning walk. Maybe it's Los Angeles or somewhere, 1970s. And I think maybe some jogger was passing by, and Prabhupada had been followed by many students. And so Prabhupada said to whoever was passing by, said, good morning. Nice, friendly. So a little while later, one of the disciples asked, well, how come you said good morning and not Hare Krishna? You would benefit more from Hare Krishna. I don't even remember Prabhupada answered, because in one sense it's not a very good question, but because we should get it. Like Prabhupada knew that for this spirit soul, in his jogger uniform at that time, good morning is going to serve their highest purpose better than Hare Krishna. Yeah, so I mean that requires superism, requires intelligence, making distinctions. So that's the platform of equality. It means I'm not relating to you as if I am my body in false ego and you are your body in false ego, and what advantages can I get and things like that. I'm relating to you as I'm a servant of God. I'm a servant of Krishna. I'm spirit soul. I'm not this body, and I'm relating to you in such a way to support you in your awakening to who you really are. Okay. So again, this is a very foundational verse of Bhagavad-gita. To some of you, I sent a list of 9 verses, about with 8 or 9 verses. 5 or 6 from Bhagavad-gita. This was one of them. So the verse is Vijavinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavihasti Neshane Chevasva Pakecha Pandita Samadarshina. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, outcast. Hare Krishna, thanks for your attention and presence. And I welcome any questions or comments. George.
Good morning. Thank you for the class. I have a question for regarding something we tend to say often, in Sapatov and so forth. The idea of truth. So sometimes I will say, "This is true for me," or "This is not true for me." And so I have been challenged in the past with this idea of what's true for me, where I've been told truth is not subjective.
Okay.
Truth is either true, like objective, or it's not true. And so I was wondering if you could maybe comment or on that idea of truth, because my understanding is there's absolute truth, which
Absolute
is
truth, yeah.
and kind of in relation to this verse, what's coming up for me is to the extent that I am connected with that absolute truth, with Paramatma, then I mean, maybe that's the difference versus being connected to false ego and things like that. So I was just wondering, in general, if you could just comment on the idea of truth being objective, subjective, or kind of how to answer it in a certain situation where, we are connected with what's genuinely alive in us.
Yeah.
And someone's like, well, it's either true or not true. Truth is objective. Truth is, So I was just kind of curious in relation to this verse, kind of how.
Yeah. Thank you, George. Were you able to hear George? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So George is talking about, okay, sometimes, well, here's what's true for me. We say that a lot. And that's so much a transformative communication process. I am experiencing, and we're not saying it's true, we're saying I am experiencing. I perceive you as, I experience you as, right? We tend not to say you are. Sometimes we use the you are. Sometimes we use that for different purposes. But okay, so it's truth subjective, it's truth objective, absolute, relative. So thank you, George. So yeah, this is a great question. Great question. All right, so the truth coming from these self-realized beings, this is absolute. Okay, so for example, so this verse is describing that in every living entity, there's a spirit soul. This is your point of view. No, that's absolute truth. Now, sometimes I might be talking to someone who they don't have realization, they don't have trust in the Vedas, and then I might say, well, what makes sense to me? What makes sense to me? I'm presenting it from a relative subjective platform. What makes sense to me is like, yeah, I can see my body's changing. There's not one molecule in the body now as everyone is 5 years old. Still, there's some constant identity. I call David Wolf. So it seems to me that my actual identity is something non-material. That's what makes sense to me. Now, I might present it because that's how it's going to connect with people. Whereas if I say, the absolute truth is that I am eternal spirit soul and so are you. Okay? So that might not connect with some people. So I might present it subjective. But at the same time, no, this is absolute. This is objective. I'm spirit soul, I'm not the body. And inside the dog, the cow, the dog eater, the blade of grass, there's spirit soul. This is absolute truth. Now, how we present it in such a way that people will get it and people will be in the question, I never thought, yeah, the body does change. Whereas if I present it, here is the absolute truth, you must accept or you're a demon. Okay, then I'm probably not doing a very good job of communicating the truth, of communicating the truth. So yeah, we want to cultivate awareness on all levels. What is Shabda Brahman? What is the what is the absolute truth coming from infallible sources? What is absolute truth coming from infallible sources? And we want to cultivate realization, awareness of that. even if we don't have realization, at least awareness. And also we want to be conscious. Also, we want to be conscious of our relative truths. Okay, so just like okay, so we gave the example earlier in the discussion. So a child, yeah, I experienced. That's the sun. It's a circle 3 inches wide. Okay, so that's the child's experience. Okay, and it's wrong. And it's wrong. Right. So, meaning that we want to experience our experience. Otherwise, it means we're disconnected and we're ignorant and we're alienated. We want to experience our experience. And in a spirit of discovery, meaning that, okay, I'm experiencing my experience of emotion. I'm experiencing my experience of physical sensation. I'm experiencing my experience of thought. And as a conditioned soul, my experiences are not an absolute source of knowledge. They're not an absolute source of knowledge. I perceive, I experience fear, and I perceive a snake. Oh, it's really just a piece of string. Oh, it's really just a piece of string. Okay. So I want to notice my experience. I want to notice my experience in a spirit of discovery, that my interpretation of it, my interpretation of my mediated sense and mental perceptions, they might sometimes confirm what is absolute. My subjective experience might sometimes confirm Shabda Brahman, that is absolute knowledge. Okay? Just like, okay, we're not this body, we're spirit soul. So that's there in Bhagavad-gita. Okay? So that is absolute knowledge. So then someone can misunderstand. Absolute. So you're just saying we just need to like blindly accept it? No. Here's an example. So we are spirit soul, we're not the body. I just accept it comes from Bhagavad-gita. Okay. So that's one way. Same time we go, well, I'm not the type of person who just accepts someone said something. Okay, let's apply our logic. Let's apply our logic. So according to my logic, the body changing is some constant identity. Yeah, I am something non-physical. So that's the anumana epistemology, the inferential epistemology, which is imperfect. But in this instance, that logical process, it confirms, supports, supplements, it substantiates the absolute knowledge. My experience of it. At the same time, let's say we're trying to figure out with our speculations and our logical analysis, let's keep in mind, sometimes we're faulty and incomplete and we make mistakes and we have cheating propensities. And a few weeks ago, let's give an example. Let's say, well, I know from experience where there's smoke, there's fire. All right, so I see in the distance, in the hill there's smoke, there must be fire on the mountain. Could be. But maybe there was fire, but the rain came and put it all out, and now there's just smoke. Okay, so there are not useless, but imperfect ways to acquire knowledge, such as sense perception and inferential analysis. They're not useless, but they're imperfect. So we want to be aware of those faculties, and to be conscious of how they align or not with the absolute source of knowledge, which is Shabda Brahman, Parampara. That's absolute source of knowledge. And sometimes our sense perception and rational analysis will confirm absolute. And sometimes our sense perception and logical analysis will contradict the Shabda Brahman. And then, getting developing more and more trust that the Vedas and Srila Prabhupada know better than me. Shocking. But that's the thing, because if there's so many things where here's what makes sense to me, but then as I just like, okay, even simple truths like I'm spirit soul, I'm not the body. Well, I didn't get that until I heard from Prabhupada. Now that I get that, at least on some cognitive level, well, it does make sense. There's a contradiction to it. But Prabhupada will often give the example that okay, the stool of an animal is contaminated. It's impure. The stool of an animal is okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, but cow dung's a stool of an animal, so that's impure. Cow dung actually has all sorts of amazing, wonderful antiseptic properties. Antiseptic, and it's purifying. So the Vedas say cow dung is pure. They clean the kitchen with it, and like that. So many things like that. Okay, so we well, that's illogical. That's irrational. Now, actually, as the decades go on, they're doing more and more experiments with cow dung, and they're finding like it's got these amazing properties that we didn't know before. Like that. So there are imperfect ways to acquire knowledge. Doesn't mean they're completely useless and we throw out our experience and we throw out our sense perception. We're aware of it. And we want to, as each day of our life, we want to cultivate more and more awareness of knowledge coming from infallible source that's absolute and that's objective. And then we can evaluate our experience and rational analysis in that context. Rebecca.
I like to share a personal experience. I'm not with what's being shared. And I wanted to first just mention that just recently in one of the classes you were talking about reading the books Prabhupada's books every day, and how from there it can help us discern, make distinctions.
Yes.
And so I'm just really connecting with that in my own experience with reading the books. And I guess I can mention this here, that there's been a discussion among those who are looking to be initiated about adding a marriage ceremony into the initiation of the process. And I've been quietly having my own process. Like I haven't really known really truly what I wanted to do. And like I've just been hearing from others and just not ready to share. And I was reading a verse, a purport from the Bhagavad-gita the other evening, just a few evenings ago. And the verse and purport aren't even really about that, but there was this one sentence, and it's so funny because I read it last night to Patrick, and I was like, I don't know what happened in that moment, but in the moment that I was reading it, I had just instant realization.
It was clear Paramatma. It was not the mind, not false ego. Paramatma, and the external representation of Paramatma is our spiritual master. And you experience that in that sentence.
Yeah, and I just was like, okay, I know what I want to do now. And
you got clear.
I got clear. And so I guess from what you're sharing, from what we're talking about, I'm really thinking about what I've been experiencing over the past, I don't know how long now, but that I've been reading regularly.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen often, but I've been having these kind of experiences while reading the book, and it's just very obvious that I am getting instruction from Prabhupada. Like it's very clear that I'm getting instruction from and deep realization too. It's not even just like oh no, I want you to do this thing. Well, okay, I'll do it because you're telling me to do it. It's like no, I understand why why you're teaching you're giving me this instruction.
And this is coming because, like, in addition to your vow to channel these 16 rounds per day, you're now regularly reading Prabhupada's books, and then you're getting super soul realization. Super soul is manifesting as Prabhupada's books.
Mm-hmm.
You have no doubt about that. Thanks for sharing. I'm really glad you shared that, because that's a point. I don't even know if I mentioned it, but I want to emphasize it more, so you just did. That because we can think of super soul, Paramatma, okay, and then make distinctions by following this process. And the pure devotees, our current link to the Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, he is the external representation of super soul through his books, through his guidance, through following his instructions. So that's like, whatever. Like, I'm not sure, is this the voice in my mind or whatever? If it's coming from Srila Prabhupada, that is super soul. And of course, Prabhupada can communicate in many ways, and he especially emphasized his books. So I'm very inspired by your sharing and by your habit of reading Prabhupada's books and the realizations you're getting. Thanks for sharing, Rebecca. Ezra.
So I sometimes feel embarrassed to embrace my relationship with Krishna, my relationship with Krishna consciousness, especially if it's like around my family or around people that I know.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have anything to share. Like, I know sometimes you've talked about the psychology of like not even wanting to admit that God is a person, or like the void and like the different like psychological components of maybe we experience painful relationships, so we don't like the idea of relationships after this life. I'm wondering if you can share anything, whether it's that psychology or experiences that maybe you've had with other devotees, of what that's about, or any advice, or basically anything around that topic.
Okay, well, thanks for your personal, vulnerable sharing. Point out to me, I'm going to ask Isaiah a question in just a moment, so it's going back there. We'll see. Well, okay, I understand that for your family members, this is very foreign, and like that, what will they think of me?
Yes.
And I had a wonderful upbringing in family, and my parents kidnapped me because it was really foreign and strange for them, and they were really very caring about me. But then, okay, so what is it you're embarrassed about, like you personally? Because I could speak, but like I could speak. So in other words, if I'm very clear, like if I'm very clear about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and I have rational reasons, and it works for me, and I'm clear, then people can say you're a fool or whatever. But I'm not embarrassed like that. So what is it that you're embarrassed about?
I see. So it's like the elements of the philosophy that are like so far out for me. Like the non-practical components. Like I can see maybe the effects of of chanting, of waking up early, of taking prasad. And then it's like oftentimes whenever I talk about this or someone engages me in this, they'll ask me questions about so what about Krishna, or like some of the things, and then comes up these things. Oh yeah, there's the Krishna Dakasha Vishnu sitting on a lake of milk. And that's like even just imagining saying that to someone, it's like I don't even believe that. So I'm sharing with you about my beliefs that I don't even believe. So like for sure, I expect that you're gonna think they're crazy because I think they're crazy.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. That clarifies. Okay. So Yeah, let's make sure that doesn't fall off. It's a little tilted. Okay. So, all right. With that, well, I would go to like what's my experience? What are the principles? What's my experience? What are the principles? And then and there are things here I don't know about and I don't claim to understand. And I can say that on several basic fundamental questions, I get more satisfying answers here than anywhere else. I get more satisfied. For example, like, we can talk about crazy stuff with forms of God, and okay, we can talk about that. But like, let's start, like, I don't know, since I'm small, I know, who am I? Who am I? And then I get like, okay, I'm not the body, I'm a spirit soul. For me, that's actually logical. And then through this chanting process, I notice that I become happier. So it works for me. Well, you're just happy, but this is foolish. Well, actually, if I apply myself philosophically, I find that, like in these books, I get a clearer understanding of who I am as a spiritual being. And then when I'm learning here, as far as what do I do as a spiritual being, I serve God with love and devotion. That's called bhakti. That makes sense to me. I haven't, in the university courses, I haven't found a better system of philosophy like that. So like, sometimes Prabhupada, well, the first child born into the movement was Saraswati, and daughter of Malati and Shamsundar. And she'd be like a little toddler, and she'd go to people, chant and be happy, because she had experience. But when she chanted, she was happy. So Prabhupada said, that's preaching. You're preaching from your realization, preaching from your experience. So I find I chant and I'm happy, and I find that the basic philosophy makes sense. And as far as if you want to talk about God, actually, the idea that there's no intelligence behind the amazingly structured universe, that doesn't make sense to me. That seems like fantasy. Okay, the idea is, okay, there's an intelligence, and it's a non-personal kind of force. Well, that makes sense to me, but it doesn't seem complete. It just seems that like I have a personality, you have a personality, I have personhood, you have personhood. It seems to me that the Supreme Being, from whom we emanate, would also have personhood. What's that personhood like? I don't have much. I'm really not clear about that. There are descriptions here. I don't know about it, but just the principle that the Supreme Being would have personhood. Otherwise, I have personhood and the Supreme doesn't. That means I'm superior to the Supreme. That doesn't make sense. Now, what's the nature of that personhood of the Supreme? What I'm learning here is that when I engage in devotional service, I get more and more realization of what's the personhood of the Supreme. So kind of that can be a time to speak from our subjective experience without going to the absolute. Yeah, well, experiences make sense to me about who I am. It's not that everything in these books makes sense to me. I'm not saying that. At the same time, based on based on what I found, this makes more sense to me than anywhere else. And I found this process, I find it to be the purest process, giving me the most happiness and fulfillment. And so, let's start with, who are you? Who am I? What's the purpose of your life? What's your understanding? To me, it makes sense to realize I'm a spirit soul and a servant of God. Again, what's the nature of God? Okay, that's bigger questions. How's that sound?
That's super helpful, because in a way it encourages me to come back to like meeting myself where I'm at.
Yeah.
And it's like, it makes sense to me, at least even like the ideas of what Prabhupada talks about. And I also have little to no realization about it, but it makes sense to me. like some of the premises of what you said, like the way to know God will be through bhakti, through loving devotional service. Like I don't have maybe any realization about that, but it makes sense to me. So like I'm at least here to endeavor to see if I can eventually cultivate that and have an experience that I can then speak from. So that's really helpful because it encourages me to be honest, which maybe doesn't look good, maybe I might feel embarrassed about, and I get to be authentic. So yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that this conversation, it points to George's question earlier. There's a time to share my subjective truth, and as far as what's coming down from Shabda Brahman, even if I had realization that probably wouldn't be the best way to present things to Paola, to Eze's mom and dad, like that. And they say, well, yeah, here's my experience. And here's, that seems real far out to me. I can't say I know it's not true. At the same time, the principle that God has personhood, that actually makes sense. Like that. So I'm glad it's helpful. Hare Krishna.
I have similar question. So for me, it's more about my doing. Like I'm going to Czech Republic tomorrow, and then people ask me, "What do you do? Like, what did you do today?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, so I saw for the deities.
Yeah.
I went to sing in the street. Like, so like I tend to respond like, yeah, I'm like, I kind of like do nothing, and I'm like thinking, what am I going to do like in the future? You know, it's like I say like it's like a transition period or something. And then I say I keep saying that, then I get into like, yeah, I guess like this is all kind of like I should like find something like better to do with my life that looks good to me and to others. So it's more like about the doing part.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like this question like, what did you do today? Is really intimidating to me.
From like somebody you might meet on the street, or an old friend from.
Or my parents, or like the graduates of the seminar, my parents, whoever. Like, what did you do today? I'm like, oh wow, which I respond.
You're not comfortable with your
With my
response.
actual doings. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, for that, I just want to share self-disclosure. I mean, I remember. Yeah, it was. I mean, I've had times where I was embarrassed and like that. I remember was in '84 when I came back from Israel, and that's when I got kidnapped and all. I remember I was visiting an old friend, and he had some people there, and one young woman asked me, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm a devotee of Krishna." And because I felt so awkward, I live in the temple, and like that. And so I didn't have it integrated. I didn't have it integrated. And now I feel, well, for many decades, I feel completely integrated in responding to the being and the doing and the philosophy. But I've had very awkward moments in my history. And so, so, I could speak with you, Ladini Shakti, and coach you, on, a response that's like authentic and in integrity, like that.
You can just give me advice.
Well, I mean, since we've known each other 5 years, you do many things that, responding to certain people could sound very impressive. You do many things. It's like you could go, well, I'm gonna be conducting a 6-day intensive seminar in self-realization. Okay, so it's like, all right, to some people, like, I'm a trainer of veterinarians. I heal animals. I coach trainers of horses. It depends. Like, what do? You want the 10-second answer? You want the 2 minutes? Here's the thing. I do seminars like that. I'm a veterinarian, I do this and that. Actually, everything I do, I want it to be aimed towards self-realization. Because God consciousness, Czech Republic, God consciousness. Yeah.
You get me so well.
Okay, but yeah, I want it to be aimed, whatever I do, I want it to be aimed towards towards people knowing themselves better. And I do a lot of things towards really supporting people to know themselves better. I treat horses, I talk to owners, I
translate book.
I translate profound ancient philosophical literatures. So yeah, so I assert it's a concocted problem. You have no problem. You're just inventing problems.
Thank you. I think I want to divert and respond to Rebecca. Like you said about Prabhupada's book reading. And Anikanta is going to give a class today evening. So how it's back, actually he was here when Yogeshwara was leaving. And I think I asked him, like, do you miss Prabhupada or something like that? And he's like, no, like when I read his books, it's even better. He said it, and I could see he meant it. And he said, because like it's like all there, it's all included, and more so, like Prabhupada wanted us to read his books. Like he didn't want us to personally associate with him. Like he wanted us. So he says, and I find like so much more fulfillment in like really knowing that I'm like teaching his instruction than being with him, which like is not different anyway. So I was really touched by. And he said, like, Prabhupada wasn't like getting up at 2 a.m. every morning to write these books for us not to read it. So that sparked your whole enthusiasm to bring him here and speak to everyone.
Thanks for doing that. And thanks for that point. Yeah. But apart from our experience, Prabhupada gave so much to give us those books. And he knew his, let's say, physical present pastimes would be a few years, whatever, like that. But his movement for thousands of years, that's through his books, and he got up at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. to give us his, and there's full transcendental potency in every word. And he did that for us. And what you're sharing about what Nikanta shared is 2 or 3 years ago, I had some correspondence with Rupa Nuga. Rupa Nuga was one of Prabhupada's first disciples on 2nd Avenue back in 1966. And of those who came in the first batch, he was kind of older, like he wasn't 18, he was already 26, 27. He had a wife and a child. He was working at a social work job, psychology, different things. But so maybe even I'll find it for tonight, the exact words, because Rupa Nuga, he wrote to me and he said, you can share this with anyone. He said, Prabhupada's present in his books is non-different from his presence at 26 2nd Avenue. There is nothing missing there. And he said, you can say that I said that to anyone, because I've been at both places. And his presence in his books there is nothing missing. And I was there in 2nd Avenue. And he wrote, he put it in writing. So thanks for sharing.
Gardamani told the same thing. He felt that he can associate with him now more, that he has time to read his books. Yeah. And he's been there too since like 66. Same batch. Yeah. I wanted to share something about Ezes and holidays. Like a question, like from my experience, I remember I had like really tough times with like my parents when I just joined the ashram, because they would call me like once a week, a month, and they would ask me, so how are you? And just that question, like I will feel intimidated, but then at some point I'll just start answering, I'm just like, no, what are you doing? So I would just say, I'm just relaxing. I'm just having a good time. Like, how long you can just have a good time? And I just say the same thing. I'm just, figuring it out, like relaxing, not working, it's a holiday. Like I think I spoke to you like a month or two ago before I came here, and I wished you like good weekend or something, and like what you told me is like really opened my mind, because you said, well, for the body every day is a weekend. I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, my parents call me when I'm here, and they ask me, so what did you do today? I'm like, well, so
Good.
Cookies,
we were
chakras.
singing in the morning. Then we discussed Bhagavad-gita,
So you had the
and
same
I cooked.
same source.
And then I'm like, oh, okay.
Good times. Good times with Jack.
Hare Krishna.
Dominique.
I'm distracted by family members that just entered the room right when I unmuted. But anyway, I'm distracted. Excuse me. I wanted to share something in response to your question, Ajay. Just a thought. Something that I say about the far out stuff is, you know, I can kind of see the what's being presented by Srila Prabhupada as like there's like two categories. There's like the philosophy, and then there's like all these stories and characters. And I don't know if it's true what is being said about all, like God and his personality and his relationships. But who am I to say that it's not true? So basically, I'm just open-minded, because I really can't put God in a box of what he does and what his relationships are and how he organizes the whole entire, you know, universe. It's like, who am I to really like have a comment? All I'm doing is I feel open-minded, and that's true for me. And also, I mean, as I go further down the path, it makes more sense to me that God would have relationships and expansions and adventures and activities, because just being like a ball of light doesn't really make sense. If you can have personhood, wouldn't it be more satisfying to have relationships and activities? So, you know, I'm just letting you know a few of my like what's logical to me around like the far out stuff, the stories and all that. It's like, yeah, there should be pretty far out adventures, you know. It starts to make more sense. And then actually a part of me thinks that the supreme personality of Godhead being a cowherd boy who plays the flute like actually makes more sense than any other personality being the supreme, because it's just so beautiful and pure and good to just take care of cows in the forest with friends and play a flute. It's just like, yeah, the flute would be the instrument. Think of all the instruments. Like, I don't know, I just start to feel like for some reason it makes sense. I just thought I'd share a few thoughts there.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Dominique. Thanks for that very much.
I'll share real quick that Mom wanted to come this morning. I was so like moved. I was getting ready to come, and she was like she was dressed and ready to come. And then she became overwhelmed, and she just became tired, and she sat back down, and the kind of the light went down again. But for like 5 minutes, there was like this bright light joy that she wanted to come. And I was already thinking like, we can go to the garage, we can go to the kitchen, and we can find a chair for her. And I decided to sit in this chair because it's a support mom to get up out of the chair, and she really wanted to come. So touched. After 5 years, she really didn't really want me to be here. Now she wants to be here. So I'm here to be her mom. She wants to come. That's all I have to share.
So touching.
Thank you, Anne.
Yesterday I had a really powerful session with Melanie, and I connected with how there's a certain mood of devotion that feels really like home for me, and it's very grave and serious, but in like the best kind of way. And I feel like there's this war inside of me between that and where I so much want to live there, and like I feel so far from what that mood actually is for me and the way that it manifests. And then like so many material desires. And it just feels like, I don't know, it's like this raging river of like desires that can just completely like go over that.
Sweep you away.
And it's like so fragile but so true, that mood of bhakti. And I don't know much about Swarup stuff, but there's something about that that feels like that I connected with, this mood that feels, I don't know, it's like the most real thing I've ever touched.
So like from the deepest part of yourself. It's so subtle. It's so subtle. I didn't look any material agitation and you're not there.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's always there. But
Yes.
for you to realize your connection there requires this very quiet, sober, grave, peaceful place within.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how to stay there. And it's like, sometimes when I ask these questions, I feel like it's pointless because people are just going to say, just keep chanting and keep reading Prabhupada's books. So I guess I'm just looking for something different. Or like, I feel like there's some other nuance that like when I hear it, I'll be like, ah, yes, that's the thing that's going to help. So I was wondering your response to that.
You want to be in that the deepest place, that the place of sweet, brave devotion. You want to be there steadily.
Yeah, I want to live there. And also there's a part of me that doesn't, because it would mean letting go of other things. But I do want to live there. And I don't fully trust myself to live there.
How do you mean you don't trust yourself to live there fully?
I guess the like material desires can be so strong, and I feel like I'm not very sincere. And so it like requires a lot more sincerity to trust myself to stay there.
Yeah, well, I really think you really seem to be responding to your question very expertly. Yeah, those darn material desires get in the way.
Yes, those materials.
Those darn, they get in the way of that steady bhava. You use kind of technical terms for our the deepest form and essence of ourselves in relation to Krishna. And so those material desires get in the way, and Rupa Goswami, Rupa Goswami answers your question. The answer to your question is greed. We need to have intense, ardent, he uses it, lolyam, intense, ardent greed for it. And which means, as you said, like I'm afraid to let go of the other stuff. I'm afraid to let go of the other stuff, and that other stuff, my attachment to it, that constantly takes me away. It constantly takes me away. Molly, I feel complete.
Yeah, it's like a sense of missing out. It's the same. We were speaking someone. Well, I think that was Dominic when you shared, like, and that's a quote, like, I will rather, give myself to God and find out at the end of my life that there is no God, than live my life as if there is no God, and then find out at the end of my life that there is God. And then to, like, that sense, like, well, there's maybe something else better to do with my life. There's something else that's going to give me more pleasure. There is something else that doubts, that constantly stay with us until we realize, well, no, there is nothing else. In fact, there is nothing else. And that's just the process of bhakti yoga. that's increasing our desire for Krishna, increasing our desire that we are not thinking of that. There is something else. And you know, it seems that young age, that's why it's so beautiful to be a devotee, because old age is such a blessing. You know, in non-devotional environments, old age is a curse. It's something to not want. But in Bhakti, you know, the older we become, the more we can see the blessing in old age, and the more we can see the curse in being young, because there's so much agitation of the mind, agitation of the senses, and sex desire, and you know, this like not trusting of like the security, because there's such a long way to go. Yeah. Life seems so far away, and so that's why the process is there to increase our desire and come to a place like, no, if I don't have like sex every day, I'm not going to be served anything. No, if I'm not eating this or that, or if I don't have $1 million in my bank account, and even if I don't have any money in my bank account, I'm not going to miss anything either. Like there's a lady that I really like. She's Christian. They have a blog that I follow. I'm a follower of their blog, and it's a Christian family, and they make beautiful songs. And there is one of her songs. She said like, "You can give me anything. I don't want it. All I want is Jesus. Just give me Jesus. You can give me beautiful everything. You can give me money. You can give me a nice family," which she has a nice family. You can give me all the sex or whatever, but just give me Jesus. I just want Jesus. So it's like that's the more we want to develop, that yes, like I can have those things. Not repression doesn't accomplish anything. So I can have those things. And that's really important, to always allow ourselves to say, yes, I can have those things. I can have sex every day. I can have all the money in the bank. I can eat meat if I want. I can gamble if I want. I can take as much drug as I want. I can do those things. But I don't want them, because I want Jesus. Well, that's yeah. I want Krishna, I want Srila Prabhupada. I want pure devotional service, because I know pure devotional service exists, and that's the yearning of my soul. Pure devotional service, that's the yearning of my soul. To every day, to everything, for the pleasure of God and Krishna. That's really high forever.
Oh, thank you, Jai.
Oh, that is oh, that's true. Oh, it's a lot easier. You know, it's a lot easier to practice Bhakti Yoga, and that's why, you know, that the Varnashram Dharma is established like that. That young people, they are going to get married, and then they will not voluntarily take so much austerity, but this so much austerity is just in a package of the ashram. And that's very funny.
It's like the taste, like having those moments of having a taste. It's like that thing that continues keeping us moving forward in the chaos. It keeps us
in the agitation of the material tidal waves, and the senses, the mind, the world. But then those tastes, I think this keeps me going with enthusiasm.
And then I imagine you keep going, and that those moments of connecting with that, what you're connecting with, become bigger moments. Yeah.
And to remember and cherish those moments, really remember them. Krishna gave us those moments of ecstasy, a moment of awe, moment of realization, and to remember and cherish those moments, because yes, they keep us going. When they're not there, when it's like we enter the dark night of the soul, where we practice but we have no tests, and then material life, you know, seems and so much more attractive. You know, material pleasure, like we become so much more attractive, because I have no test right now for devotional service. But I remember that day when I felt a joy that nothing in the material world could ever give me.
So we have since Shabbat Siddhanta appearance daily report here. Actually, I realized that I remember the verse because I keep like every night I keep staring at it, and now I remember. So it's exciting.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. But for me, it was just a Tamasic forgetfulness that I could take service. Krishna can use everything in his service. Yeah, so like if I'm steadily...
Everything have a purpose in the material world.
Yeah, everything has a purpose. Hare Krishna, Hari Hari Bol. As if I'm steadily in that very deep place, I'm steadily there, and it's connected with Paramatma, connected with Krishna, the heart. And it can sound nice, it is nice in the highest sense, but I may get directed in ways that I don't want. I, meaning my false ego, my mind, kind of like, no, I'm not ready to give that up. And so just looking at that. Because of, well, yeah. So then, and then that keeps me not steady in that place. The fear that, yeah, I might be directed to a life that is against my ego's plans to control. Bhagavad-gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh Lord, give me chastity, but not just yet. That's St. Augustine.
Exactly, yes. Exactly, that's a good quote.
Yeah.
That's a really good quote.
Not right now.